Hello and good afternoon, or welcome to Channel EU. My guest here today needs no introduction. FRS in 1970, Elliott Crescent Medal in 72, Nobel Prize in Physics in 73, Faraday Medal, Hughes Medal. I'm exhausted even listing all of them here. Anyway, it's my honor and pleasure to have our celebrity guest with us tonight, Mr. Brian Josephson. How are you, Mr. Josephson? How was it with COVID and the lockdown and other things?
Well, I'm fine. We go out walking most days, so it's very nice around here in Cambridge.
Oh, that's nice. I know you are from Cardiff, and only I'm interested in knowing about how you gravitated towards physics, science in general, for as career. What made you choose physics in the first place?
Right. Well, I was interested in both maths and physics,
Mhm.
particularly.
Okay.
Um, Actually, I started doing mathematics in Cambridge. It was recommended as being well, somewhere easier to get into. I don't know. And uh, what happened is a little strange in that for the second year in the maths tripos, I had to decide between pure and applied.
Right.
I chose applied because I'd got higher marks, but I realized ultimately that was a mistake. I got higher marks because it's just you just churn out the answers in applied, and pure mathematics you have to think. Then I found the applied was rather boring, nothing much to do with the real world, and basically that's why I changed to physics. Hmm.
Why did you say it was not a good idea then? What makes you say that?
Oh, well, it was just that the reason was I got um, just higher marks, and I realized that that was just because it's easier to answer applied maths questions. Um, well, I don't know. I don't know how I would have done. It was just, uh, in fact, an irrational decision. I was more interested in pure maths anyway, I think, so I should have continued on that basis and not be swayed by my exam results.
Oh dear. Now, what made you look into panphysicism and, you know, when you looked into it, how did your colleagues react to it initially, and how do they react to it now?
Um, well, actually, I'm a fellow of Trinity College, and that has quite a good reputation there in the paranormal. The It's had past presidents of the Society for Psychical Research. Um, but in the world of physics at large, people are a bit hostile.
Yes,
No, uh, I had a bit of a problem in the department.
yes.
They sort of um, try to dissuade students working for me.
Why do they do that? Is it because they are, um, you know, they have a single mind, or they don't want to look beyond uh, what could be the pure science, or why do you think they are critiquing your work?
Um, well, um, I think there may be an opinion that if there's something wrong with you, if you accept the paranormal, that isn't such a general one. And it may have been just one individual that was against me. One thing that happened was that, let me see, had uh, a Greek physicist who spent a sabbatical here, and she was doing experiments
Right.
on psychokinesis
Okay.
at the Cavendish, and she actually got into the papers in an interview. She was interviewed, and this got out that research in the paranormal was done in the Cavendish, and head of department, I think, thought this is terrible. But in fact, she'd been, this is a different issue, somebody who'd been approved by the low temperature physics group to use some of their, to use a screened room for experiments. It's by no means universal, it's just that the wrong people have strong views and put about their opinions on it.
Yeah. Do you think the scientific community should be more open towards accepting findings that break conventional principles, or the established do established norm make them more hesitant to accept findings that may strain their strongly held beliefs? What's your take?
Um, it's a kind of self-perpetuating process, I think. There's something which is the official view that denies the paranormal and intelligent design or something, and then uh, people are terrified about letting their views be known as it would affect their reputation. So the facts never get out, really, and the process continues. The journals pick that up. You'll very rarely get a paper on the paranormal in Nature, for example. So,
So how have you dealt with all these implicit biases they've had towards your research, especially on cold fusion theory? Before which, for us, can you explain what cold fusion theory could be, please?
yes, well, haven't really been working on the theory, and I think it's not very well understood. That's a case where, well, I don't know all the factors involved. People were quite enthusiastic at the beginning.
Yeah,
Then they, some people didn't get it to work. And I think you have people who don't understand that with materials you don't always get the same result at the same time. So we
yes,
just assumed if one person doesn't get it, then there was an error. So then the idea got entrenched that cold fusion was a mistake. I, on the other hand, have visited a number of labs and looked at the evidence, and it's fairly clear that sometimes it's happening. However, the initial hopes were not satisfied because it's been difficult to get it reliable, and the more energy you want, the less easier it is to reproduce it. So some people are trying to find out how you can make power usefully with it. Some people are keeping quiet about it because of patents. They don't want to be their ideas to be used by anyone, other people. So I don't know what's going to happen really.
are you
Hopefully,
disappointed, Mr. Josephson? Are you disappointed
yeah.
the lack of reception and people not trying to understand where you're coming from? Are you are
Hmm.
you worried that your theories may not be put forward in the right way to the right channel with the right publication? Are you
Um,
worried?
well, it's a bit of a mixture because um,
Yes,
uh, one problem I have is with the physics preprint archive, and they, to a large extent, block papers, and that's one mechanism by which people get to know of um, your research. Haven't actually tried to get published very much because I've just been mainly putting forth preliminary ideas. I think I now have a more cogent case that physics is um, incomplete because it doesn't take into account meaning.
correct.
That's been published, but a journal that probably not many people know about.
No. So, do you think the scientific journals should be made open source than, getting paywall like this?
What I'm doing now is using ResearchGate because that is something, it's not a journal, but
No, it's publicly available for all, for free.
yeah, that's right. Oh, there's also something called filled papers, um, a philosophy equivalent of a physics preprint archive, and I've had no problems with them at all.
Right.
And yeah,
So you're a proponent of water memory theory. There are a lot of research and people have approved. However, overall, the scientific community haven't. So would water memory theory give us insight into creationism or give us access to the primordial soup that created life on Earth?
well, it's a question of how you, what kind of theory you develop. It's the thing that I'm trying to get now. People have qualitative ideas that you have some kind of movement which creates other movements, and there seems to be a lot of sense about it. There's I guess, a scientific theory called coordination dynamics, which are mathematical models of how things work together.
That's correct. Like the black hole information paradox, it states the physical state stored in black hole is lost forever. Does the same apply to water memory theory, or is there a way to extract the data that's imbibed? Do you think?
Well, I'm thinking more of a general problem of how mind works and how intelligence works. One thing particularly is human language. That's something amazing if you think about it, because it didn't start off as it is. Languages gradually develop and they're very complex and work amazingly well. So I gave a talk once at a conference at Imperial College on saying if we understand that, then we go a long way to understanding mind. I think some close attention must be given to understanding how it really works.
Okay.
And then that would give you a theory of mind which every physicist would accept. They would say, this is a new kind of organization. We should think about that. And that kind of organization would then include the possibility that the universe comes into existence because it's specified in some way as something beyond what physics understands prior to our universe. Mind is at work in that. And one of the things it can do is design a universe, bring it into being, and furthermore, assist evolution. Evolution would be a process. Intelligent design doesn't deny evolution takes place. It may be pushed in certain directions, so that with a goal in mind, as it were. So in other words, what I'm saying is that sometime in the future, we may be developing theories on that basis, just as we work from quantum mechanics, from basic quantum mechanics to something more elaborate. And then it'll be a bandwagon and things will change.
Just out of interest, Mr. Josephson, do you believe in God?
Well, I believe in some entity which can contact. In what sense that's God, I don't really know.
Okay. So what's your take on Big Bang theory then, if you're going to say that, that something must have happened even prior to the, forming of life and other things? What's your opinion?
Well, that's an interesting issue. Well,
Yes.
Big Bang itself is a thing people are working on. They are trying to get the physics involved, especially at the beginning. And there are puzzles because it seems to a puzzle as to why life should occur at all. That involves a number of coincidences, and people don't have a good model of life.
Yeah, there's also a watchmaker theory and so many other theories. Are you open-minded about them, or what's your take?
Well, I would say it looks more likely that that isn't the right theory, because there's a difference between saying something might be possible in principle and that doesn't make a good case for it. The problem is the numbers. You can consider what is the probability that this would have happened, and it may turn out to be extremely probable and improbable, whereas it may fit better with intelligent design, which is just say that there's some kind of assistance of evolution.
Wow.
Of course, that has to accept the fact that evolution often produces bad results, but that's okay if you have the right theory that can integrate the two ideas that evolution occurs, but as a factor in the background. And people just don't understand this. The conventional understanding is extremely unintelligent, I would say. But it's dogma, so you can't really argue with them.
That's right. So that, okay, we'll talk about the ESP. I know you've had a great interest in them. Do you think it's just a serendipitous result of multiple senses working in tandem with each other, or is it an instinctive and isolated calculus performed by our mind or consciousness, like similar to how a temperature fluctuation makes us undergo physiological changes?
We're talking about ESP. I would say it's a different sense, sensitive to different things. And perhaps we can learn to be more sensitive to these things. There's no encouragement in our society to do that, but it would appear that in more primitive societies, if one can call them that, it is ESP and remote viewing of the norms. But the evidence for it is pretty strong, as Jessica Woods has said. In any other, in any other field, this would be regarded as proof. It's difficult to know what would be accepted as proof if they don't accept the evidence that is there now.
Right, very interesting. I also know you practice Qigong, is that what it's called?
Yeah, yes, that's
Can you explain
routine.
a bit about what it is and why you got interested in it, and how do you practice? And do you have time at all?
Yes, it's something like 15 minutes a day.
All right.
Let's see, I think I got to know about it in various directions, or at least in the form of Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually get a CD with lessons on Tai Chi. I found that...
Is it similar, sorry to interrupt, is it similar to Tai Chi, or is it a different...
Yes, it's pretty well the same thing. I think Tai Chi is more directed towards martial arts, and Qigong perhaps more to expanding the awareness. But anyway, I didn't get on very well with that because you have to remember the movements, and my memory of the spatial movements as it is with dancing is very bad. Then I came across this thing by someone called Tristan Truscott, and he's an incredibly good teacher. So I got his course and have been following it ever since.
Right.
What it's about is the idea that there's some kind of background energy which you can tune
The Chi,
into.
isn't it? Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, Chi. Which tends to be blocked. And you can, as it were, learn to be in tune with it and gradually make more and more contact. So I feel that's what's happening. You might, for example, feel it with your hands. Your hands sort of, you might feel if your hands are together, you feel something. So you learn to be sensitive with your hands and try various things. And sometimes you feel you are doing what's supposed to be happening is happening. So I think it's having good effects on my health.
Wow, good. Mr. Josephson, there are so many youngsters, even my children were contemplating science, when they were leaving school. And I know you've achieved great heights and you've also faced disappointments, criticisms. What's your message to the youngsters, to the younger generation now, the youth who want to pursue science? Do you think it's worth their while to go academically, and should they be prepared to face disappointments that you have faced? It's not easy, I know.
Well, it's not all that difficult either, and it's some people may find it very interesting.
Okay.
And of course, it has certainly has employment prospects. Not so much in universities because there's more people want to do it than can be accommodated, but it has application in an industry, for example.
Right. That's good. That's a very, very, very positive. So what's your IQ, Mr. Josephson? Have you ever tested?
Not too interested in it. I think it's fairly high. Once upon a time, I was invited by Mensa, as you know, as the society.
I was going to ask you. That was my next question, really.
Oh, yeah.
And did you join it?
No, all I did was give a lecture, and perhaps people with very high IQs are deficient in other ways, not very good at the human side. I should say, I think my meditation has helped there, a combination of that, and I once went a weekend course, part of which was to sort of, in a way, force you to connect with people by sort of being with them, and maybe things like eye contact. And so I think maybe I've managed to escape the trap of being intelligent.
I'm sure it's a big loss for Mensa, really. So having won the Nobel so young, you were what, 33 when you won it?
Yes.
So looking back now, how do you think the scientific community was then, and how is it now, with regards to being open-minded and being true to science and in receiving your theories? And is there any difference between the science then and the community now? I mean,
well, I'm not sure, but let me just say one thing, that it has helped in the sense that people can't really say you can't work on that.
no.
If you were not in that position, I mean, there might have been pressure on me not to work on it, but it has affected, and most people have got lots of students who work with them, and hostility from the department has meant that I've only very rarely had students. One was successful getting a PhD in ordinary physics, which refuted some claims that I couldn't do that. But
why is that?
Yeah, but it has certainly helped having the internet and email, because you can have contacts with people without having to get them a place in the department. And that's been very fruitful. But to get back to your question, I don't think it made any difference. Yeah, well, one thing I will say is that people who actually have contact with me have a very different view of me than the scientific community at large. They realise that I'm actually perfectly sensible and reasonably intelligent, which is not the point of view put about in the scientific community as they chat.
Wow. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add to this interview? I know I've taken so much of your time. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add anything to this, or do you want to send out a message, or anything you want to contribute?
Well, one thing I might, I don't know about messages to people. People ask me that, and I nothing I can say. I can't tell you how to get a Nobel Prize, which is a frequent question. I might just mention what I call my 4 heresies, and that's, I say I don't have time for any more. We've mentioned the paranormal. Well, I think there's good evidence, and a number of scientists believe, but it's genuine, but afraid to say it. Cold fusion, I've sort of covered. There's work going on it. Maybe I've covered a lot of these things. Intelligent design, I talked about. What's the other thing?
Yes. What's your project that you're working on currently now? Are you working on anything that is that you want to share?
Well, I'm really focusing entirely on getting a theory of mind that people will recognize as being physics. So I hope it's one thing I find incidentally is I feel that if the answer is there, I have to clear the blocks in my mind, and it will be revealed to me piece by piece. I might say actually to people wanting advice that you should, it'd be good to meditate or do something like that.
Do you think that helps, meditation, really?
Yes, I think it increases the clarity of your thought.
Okay.
When I began with transcendental meditation, the first thing I noticed was I suddenly became aware that there was a world outside me. I'd been entirely lost in my thoughts, and suddenly I noticed the outside world. But it also can increase your creative aspect.
Wow. Do you think that happens? Do you think it's a reality?
I'm sure it does, and
All right.
I
Is it
think you can
because of the
probably.
chakra or the chi concepts like that, or it's only because you clear your mind and
Well, not too sure about mechanism. I think it's a question of clearing blockages, and but I think there's evidence for it, and it's even you often see it recommended in schools as a thing that pupils should be taught.
okay, but it's not well received, isn't it? The concept of meditation and science going together, it's not very well accepted, isn't it, overall by our community, really? The fraternity, yeah.
Well, I think that's one thing that's certainly changed since, I don't know whether it's the time I got the Nobel Prize, and that meditation is far more accepted than it was at that time. It was thought of very peculiar then, whereas now businesses are saying meditation would be good for our staff. So that certainly has changed. I'm feeling that there isn't much in the way of opposition now. People may say it's not for me, but they're not really against it, and not saying it can't do any good.
Yeah, but there's no proven theory, isn't it, that if you meditate, your mind will be cleared and you get to think more, you can get to understand things better. It's not proven yet, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't know of research. I suppose it's some things have been proved, I believe. Of course, you have to specify exactly how to measure those things, which may be difficult. My fourth heresy is memory of water.
Yes.
I was one of the first people to know about this because I went to a conference where Jacques Benveniste talked about his researches. This was before the Nature article. He'd found out that you could actually affect water. I think he had some biological test. He found you could affect water by not only the high dilution method of homeopathy, but by sending signals to it. And this has been taken up by Nobel laureate Luc Montagnier, who's based on
he had worked as well. Yes, he's
yes.
quoted to have worked.
But anyway, this is a case where there's great hostility, and it's all dismissed. So
it's not accepted at all. I know you have spoken about it. People have spoken about it, other scientists. But
yes, it's the kind of thing where, again, just as with cold fusion, people don't realize that materials may behave differently in different circumstances.
Yes.
Maddox and his friends seem not to realize that biological systems may suddenly start working, and thought they disproved it. Nature managed to suppress the evidence for it. And there we are. Okay then. Right.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Josephson. Thank you. Thanks so much.